Coming up next on Eyewitness News, sabotage at the airport. Who is cutting cables in planes and why? We've got a live report. Also, will the O.J. Simpson jury hear his private conversation with Rosie Greer? We're going to go live to Los Angeles.
Plus, get ready to dig a little bit deeper why prices are going up at the pump once again. Also, why your Christmas tree could be good for your health. Breathe deep. And a big role for Winona Ryder. She stars in Little Women. We'll hear about her new project. All of that, plus Howard Stern's very unusual meeting.
And Sam's exclusive AccuWeather forecast. Is there snow coming?
Snow?
Eyewitness News.
Season's greetings from all of us at Channel 7.
This is the Tri-State Area's news leader, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. With Greg Hurst, Roz Abrams, Sam Champion with the exclusive AccuWeather forecast, and the Eyewitness News team. Now, Eyewitness News.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Roz Abrams. Trouble is stalking the airlines. Now it is sabotage, the target, jumbo jets belonging to Tower Air. The FBI is in on the case, looking for answers. NJ Burkett is live at Kennedy Airport with details. NJ.
Roz, the FAA is expected to hold a news conference here at Kennedy Airport within the hour. A spokesman for the FAA has insisted today that the airline is, in their words, perfectly safe to fly. But the motive remains unclear, the suspect remains at large, and security at Tower Air has been stepped up tonight.
Sources say in some cases, the damage wasn't discovered until minutes before takeoff. Investigators confirmed tonight that wires and cables linking some of the jet's in-flight systems had been cut. It was not until cockpit crews conducted their routine pre-flight checks that they realized the jets had been tampered with. Half a dozen Tower Air 747s are believed to have been sabotaged in late October and early November. The suspect is believed to have been someone with access to the tarmac and the airline's maintenance facility. Someone who appears to have known exactly what he was doing. The airline's chairman says it appears to have been the work of a disgruntled employee who deliberately clipped non-essential wires, intending not to down an airliner, but to make a point.
What he did was in order, in my view, to make a point. Whether he thought that that point was made well enough by going to non-essential wires, that will have to be answered by him.
The airline's chairman told reporters that there had been an unsuccessful attempt to unionize workers in the weeks before the incidents, a connection that is not being ruled out tonight. This morning, passengers arrived for the airline's 11 a.m. flight to San Juan. There were those with reservations in more ways than one.
Even if it is anything true about that, that worries me because I just left my mother on the plane. She's going there for vacation. Hopefully she makes it. That worries me.
Now, precisely how essential the sabotage systems were is still not clear tonight. The latest incident occurred 5 weeks ago, and it is important to emphasize that all of the problems were detected and corrected while the jets were still on the ground. The FAA once again planning to hold a news conference here within the hour. For now, we're live at Kennedy Airport. NJ Burkett, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Airline industry problems also extend to American Eagle. The carrier, devastated by 2 deadly crashes in 6 weeks, now has suspended flights in 6 Midwest cities and in New York. American Eagle counters were quiet after pilots complained of a lack of training aboard the Saab-built aircraft in cold weather and icy conditions. The Saabs were brought in after the ATR turbos were grounded.
What we've decided to do is just discontinue flying in 10 Midwestern cities out of Chicago. We will resume flying out of Chicago on January 4th with pilots from other American Eagle companies.
The Saab-made planes were in use for just 1 day yesterday before the pilots complained and the airline responded. Coming up on Eyewitness News at 6, the wings of Kiwi Airline are clipped. We'll have the story of the problems facing the small employee-owned airline after the FAA raises questions about pilot training. That's coming up on Eyewitness News at 6.
It's a question of privacy in the O.J. Simpson trial. His lawyers claim that jailers eavesdropped on Simpson's confidential conversations with his religious advisor. The arguments are over Simpson's talk with Roosevelt Greer, the former football player turned minister. Our senior correspondent, John Johnson, is following the story. He has the very latest developments from Los Angeles. John.
Thank you, Roz. Fireworks here in the O.J. Simpson courtroom as Simpson's attorneys clash with Judge Lance Ito over keeping a potentially incriminating conversation overheard between O.J. Simpson and his minister from being used as evidence against Simpson in his double murder trial.
It would create...
O.J. Simpson's attorneys argued sometimes angrily and animatedly against the prosecution's attempts to have a November 13th jailhouse conversation between O.J. Simpson and his former football pal turned minister, Rosie Greer, admitted into evidence. The conversation overheard by a jailhouse guard was described by Simpson's attorneys as a violation of Simpson's right to privacy, and taken out of context could have incorrect interpretations since the guard admitted he only heard the part of the conversation between Greer and Simpson when they started yelling at each other and O.J. Simpson began to cry.
We can imagine a situation where Mr. Simpson might have said, I am so depressed. I can't believe that people who actually know me would go on television and say, I did it. I killed 2 people. And the deputy just overhears those 2 little snatches.
Prosecutor Marcia Clark argued the mere fact that Simpson and Greer raised their voices and could be overheard violated their own right of privacy.
The fact that the defendant yelled is clear, and that he had to have raised his voice to be heard by the deputy is also shown by the fact that Reverend Greer was able to hear it without the benefit of the telephone and responded back in the same tone of voice.
When Judge Ito seemed to agree with the prosecution's argument that Simpson's right to privacy was violated by his yelling, it set off a confrontation between Ito and lead counsel Robert Shapiro.
And if the parties choose to shout at each other, that's their problem.
Shapiro suggested Ito was wrong even for suggesting the loss of privacy, since Ito was well aware of the constraints of the jailhouse privacy room Simpson's attorneys, minister, and visitors used was monitored by jailhouse guards.
And then you went there yourself and saw we didn't have privacy.
Shapiro, please. Let me caution you at this point.
What Judge Lance Ito then did was put the court into recess. They are now going back in to continue these arguments over whether or not to have this incriminating conversation, this apparently incriminating conversation, allowed into evidence. We'll have more on it tonight on Eyewitness News at 11. Reporting live from Los Angeles, I'm John Johnson, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
In New York this evening, police are hunting for a carjacker who picked the wrong car and the wrong chauffeur. The 1994 Mercedes belongs to Revlon President Jerry Levin. He was not in the car last night when a man stuck a gun to the head of Levin's driver, ordered him out, and sped off. But you see, the driver is a retired cop who pulled his own gun and fired, shattering one window in the car. That was enough for the thief, who scrambled out and ran away. On Long Island, police may have a crucial lead in the latest rape at the Roosevelt Field Mall. A garage security camera at the mall may have caught the attack on tape Wednesday afternoon. Police say the tape may lead them to the 2 men who attacked a woman as she returned to her car. In spite of that video surveillance, the attackers were scared off by another shopper, not by the mall's security.
A history-making event in New Jersey this afternoon. The first African-American appointed to the New Jersey Supreme Court was sworn in. 51-year-old James Coleman was surrounded by his family as he was sworn in this afternoon at the capital of Trenton. Coleman, an appellate division judge, was chosen by New Jersey Governor Christine Whitman to replace Justice Robert Clifford on the state's highest court. A lot of people are judging what President Clinton is calling the middle-class Bill of Rights. It's a $60 billion cut over 5 years, with the middle class benefiting most from the tax breaks. But it would take years to put into action. Deborah Weiner has the story.
I want a leaner, not a meaner government.
President Clinton's push to win over working America with what he called a middle-class Bill of Rights entered a new phase, the offensive. In his speech, the president said he'll shrink many government programs and further reduce bureaucracy to pay for $60 billion worth of tax cuts. The president's inner circle lined up to sell his plan as more fiscally responsible than the Republicans' proposal.
We did what we could afford and stay within our budget limitations and see that every cent was paid for. I would not be standing here if I had not been convinced of that.
I would urge you to hold the Republican proposals to the same kind of test that we have met in the proposals that the President has presented.
The President's plan offers tax credits for those with children 12 and under, deductions for families paying college tuition, and breaks for Americans saving for retirement. An ABC News poll taken after the speech found 75% approved of it, though more than half felt he was pressured to revive his campaign promise of a tax cut because the GOP already pledged one. Republicans spent the day welcoming the President aboard.
I think our contract with America has been very clear. We have an agenda, and I think that the President is buying into ours.
With all the tax plans out there, a tax cut seems almost inevitable. What isn't certain is who will get the credit for making it happen. This is Deborah Weiner live at the White House. Back to you, Roz and Greg.
All right, Deborah, thank you. And as the tax cut battles take shape, the President is also moving ahead to protect United Nations troops in Somalia. The administration has ordered 3,000 U.S. Marines to the waters off Somalia. They'll be in a state of readiness just in case the President orders them ashore to help in the withdrawal of some 15,000 UN troops. Congressional leaders are now being briefed. The mission could take place under hostile conditions. In the fight against crime, the Justice Department has come up with another weapon. Attorney General Janet Reno, along with Representatives Charles Schumer and Carolyn Maloney, announced plans to provide $200 million in grants to help police departments buy new equipment and move officers from desk work to the streets. The program is part of the crime bill.
One of this country's worst criminals remains at large this evening. He is the so-called Unabomber, who mails deadly explosives to his victims. Today in New Jersey, a sad goodbye to a man who opened one of those packages last weekend and paid with his life. David Novarro reports.
Still numb from the senseless murder of her husband, the wife of Thomas Mosser was joined by hundreds of mourners this morning at the Notre Dame Church in North Caldwell. With his killer still on the loose, security was tight. But today, the call for justice took a back seat to overwhelming grief. And before the service began, the family expressed deep gratitude for all the support they've received during this difficult time.
We deeply appreciate your kindness and understanding. It has been a great source of comfort for Susan and the entire family to know that Tom was so loved and admired.
Mosser was only 50 years old and on top of the world when it all came to a sudden end on Saturday. Investigators believe he became the 15th target of a mad bomber when he opened an odd package mailed to his home from California. The FBI suspect it was the work of a man they've been hunting since 1978. Why he reemerged now, killing a man recently promoted to general manager and executive vice president of the ad agency Young and Rubicam, no one can say.
Because of the shock of it, you know? Yeah. And then Christmas coming along. The whole thing was absolutely a disaster.
It was a heartbreaking service that left many near tears, especially as the children of Mosser led the congregation in the singing of O Holy Night.
It was one of the most moving services I have ever attended. It was one of the saddest services I've ever attended. It was just something too difficult to fathom.
After the service, Mosser's wife left the church with their 15-month-old girl in her arms. She and Mosser's 3 other children then headed to the cemetery to say their last goodbyes. Reporting from North Caldwell, David Novarro, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And the FBI says there could be another bombing soon because the Unabomber has a pattern of following one attack with another.
Senseless. Eyewitness News, flames and smoke tear through a shopping mall, leaving a trail of rubble and destruction.
Also time to dig a little deeper when you fill up at the pump. Gas prices are going up once again. Plus, she is a hot star with a brand new movie. We will meet Winona Ryder a little bit later on Eyewitness News.
Some people in one town in Pennsylvania will have to find a new place to do their Christmas shopping. Fire has destroyed a huge shopping mall. The fire broke out in Altoona early this morning. No one was there at the time, so no one was hurt, but 25 stores were destroyed and the central concourse was gutted. The mall had no sprinkler system. Damage is estimated at $10 million. The water is flowing again in northwest Yonkers. A water main break yesterday under the Sawmill River knocked out water service or caused low water pressure to 8,000 homes. Repair work, though, has now been finished.
The flow of gasoline from the pump to your car is going to cost you more, perhaps as much as 8 cents a gallon more. Andy Field is live in Washington to tell us why and when. Andy.
Well, Roz, gas prices could jump anywhere between 8 and 20 cents a gallon. That's what some industry analysts are saying right now. That will happen at the start of the new year, and that's when New York and other big cities start selling the new low-pollution gasoline. Now, the air is going to be cleaner, but your budget is going to be a lot tighter. There's not much happy motoring at the gas pump.
It's ridiculous.
I'm not happy about it, but I'll do it.
The gas is too expensive to begin with.
Gas prices are rising because the type of gas you'll buy will change New Year's Day. Congress's Clean Air Act told oil companies to oxygenate your gasoline and cut some of the nation's worst ozone pollution. Starting January 1st, more than a dozen cities, including New York and most of the East Coast, must buy the new oxygenated gas. Oil companies spent millions mixing the new formula. Some customers don't mind paying more for clean air.
That if they're going to raise the prices a little bit to do something good for the environment, then I'll try and drive a little bit less.
This is a rare time where the government, oil companies, and environmental groups all agree that the cleaner, more expensive gasoline is a good idea. Congress and the American Automakers Association say since they took the lead out of your tank, car pollution has dropped dramatically. This new gas will help even more.
A 15% drop, which is equivalent to taking more than 8 million cars off the road.
And there's more bad news. Not only will the new oxygenated gas cost you more, but you'll get less miles per gallon. You think it's worth it?
Sure.
Why?
Why? It's healthier.
Drivers can't blame all the high prices on cleaner gas. The government's also making oil tankers now carry higher insurance against oil spills. And that cost ends up at your pump, too. Now, the petroleum industry says as soon as more people start buying this new cleaner gas, the prices at the pump should come down. We are live in Washington. Andy Field, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And up next on Eyewitness News, the parents of a hero student who came to the rescue during a hostage crisis speak out.
And why a big testing service gets a failing grade. Thousands of students may pay the price. That's next on Eyewitness News.
In Albany this afternoon, an angry protest over security at the state university. Students want protection on the campus beefed up in the wake of Wednesday's hostage crisis in a school auditorium. It ended when 19-year-old Jason McEnany of Hicksville, Long Island, was shot trying to subdue the gunman. Today, McEnany's parents said they're not that concerned with security, at least not just yet.
Concerned about my son. You know, I'm back and forth to the room. Talking to the doctor most of the time, who was very encouraging. And that's it. That's it.
And that's top priority. Doctors say McEnany is expected to make a full recovery. Overseas, in Japan, education officials have ordered a crackdown on schoolyard bullies. The reason? A sudden rise in teenage suicides. In the last 3 weeks, 6 students have killed themselves. Many, it's believed, the result of being bullied by other students. However, some experts blame the rash of suicides on intensive pressure put on the teens to pass college entrance exams.
Students planning to go to graduate school could find a dilemma. The plug is being pulled on the computerized graduate record exam because it's easy to cheat on. David Ushery reports.
At the Kaplan Educational Centers in Midtown, there was already a prevailing feeling that computerized admission tests were vulnerable to cheating. And the president of the nation's largest test preparation company says those suspicions were confirmed earlier this fall when he sent 20 employees in to take the GRE in various locations. In just a couple of weeks, those employees were able to memorize 70 to 80% of the questions because they kept recurring on the tests.
If a computer test like the GRE CAT can be violated the way this was, the implications are we better understand exactly the limitations of a computer test before we use it widely.
Greer says the company did its own investigation because too many students were recalling the very same questions in their prep classes. Kaplan turned its list of compromised questions over to the Educational Testing Service in Princeton, which administers the GRE. ETS says the problem is really a growing pain of adopting 90s technology.
While we recognize that it is potentially a problem, we certainly don't accept the notion that it is as severe a problem as Mr. Greer and his colleagues. And by the way, neither do our clients, the Graduate Record Examination Board.
The GRE was the first exam to be computerized by ETS. It was praised in 1992 because student exams would no longer be a mass cattle call, but could be individualized, and the results could be returned quickly. But while paper and pencil tests were offered 4 times a year, they had different sets of questions. The computerized exams are offered every day, but they cannot completely change all of the questions every day. In the meantime, testing goes on as usual, ETS says, because they stand by the validity of those tests. They will suspend testing, however, on December 26th and make some changes. When it resumes on January 3rd, the They say there will be many more different questions on those exams. In Princeton, I'm David Ushery, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Now, if your scheduled testing date falls during the suspension period, you should call the testing service and to make a new appointment.
Speaking of testing, will our weekend weather make the grade? Who cares? It's the weekend. Sam Champion's up next with the exclusive AccuWeather forecast. Also, how your Christmas tree could be good for your health and the air you breathe.
Plus, important information about a medical procedure that could save your life. We're on call with Dr. Jay Adlersberg. And a wonderful choir you don't want to miss. That's next on Eyewitness News.